Hey guys, coming back for American Crime Season 2, Episode 4, and I was definitely really looking forward to this episode, especially after last week with the really big reveal. I really didn't know what was going to happen here, and what an amazing episode this was. I was honestly a bit worried, guys. I really was worried that they were going to drag this out, and we weren't going to find out what actually happened. But no, this episode told us pretty much everything we need to know, and it changes literally everything. And it was everything I wanted this episode to be. I mean, they just made the show so much more interesting. I'll get into why. You guys know why. And I was right about something. I actually predicted what happened, but I don't care because it was just handled so well. But let's get in this episode. Without a doubt, the best episode of the season, and probably the best episode of anything I've watched on TV so far this year. There's so much to love about this one. Let's just get into it. I love the way this episode starts, first of all. I really love that because it was a very it was a very unconventional way to start. I mean, you think that the way this would start would be picking up last week, but that's not how we start here. And it really shows how how emotionally investing American crime is. I mean, a lot of American crime has to do with the internal emotion that one is feeling, and this scene just perfectly summed that up. We see this young man, he's talking about, basically, he's giving this speech about how it feels to be raped, and the way that the way that he influxed his, pathos in this was incredible. And that's one of the most important things about this speech. I really thought this was very powerful. The biggest thing about this is that for all we know, this could be a real rape victim. We haven't seen this character. To me, this kid was not acting. I honestly feel that this kid in real life, I don't know who he is, but this actor felt like he really had been raped. And the young man describes rape as feeling like every room in his home being broken into at the same time. We hear that the crowd is snapping instead of applause, hinting that this is probably like a poetry slam or performance art show. And I loved how he talks about how, they really didn't start listening to him until he used metaphors and things like that. And he said that he doesn't remember he doesn't remember how he felt when the rape happened, but he just described it. And after breaking the fourth wall, he looks us right in the eye, which I thought was very interesting the way they did that towards the end. Literally, he looks us right in the eye. He ends with this really genuine line of, "You were so busy figuring out how they got in that you forgot all about the person living there." And basically, that's how the episode starts. Very powerful stuff. Really loved it, and very well summed up what we were in for, because this was a very dark episode, definitely. I mean, the show in general has been dark, but this episode was just kind of like insane. It really was. So we cut to Leslie. She's reading the details of the rape accusation to Dan, and she's basically trying to tell him that they can't play nice anymore. They can't. And Dan says that it doesn't prove that anything happened. And I like what Leslie says, that he needs to think about, if this were to happen to Becca, and how he would feel if this were to happen to her. And Dan says to not talk about her, and Leslie tells him to not be defensive. She's not accusing him, but she is asking him to face the reality of the situation. And I like what she's saying, that he needs to really stop playing nice. He can't be this nice guy. That's what he's tried to do. He's tried to be this supportive guy just looking out for his team, but he can't do that anymore. He needs to accept the fact that either his team is deceiving him or one person is deceiving the whole team. And Dan's convinced that his team respects him, but Leslie says that they lied, and the truth is in the evidence. Clearly, there's someone that's not telling the truth. And she says the police want DNA samples from the team, and they need a name, and Dan says that they need to think about the best opportunity to sit down, ask the boys what really happened. But Leslie says that it's done nothing, and they can no longer play protector. And if someone on Dan's basketball team tells the truth, this will all end. So basically, that's what has to happen there. And I really love that scene because, again, it really shows Dan's loyalty. He sees these boys, he sees them as boys. He sees them as boys on his team, and he's not afraid to admit, he is kind of, I think, afraid to admit that they will make mistakes. And this wasn't a mistake, though. To Leslie, this definitely seemed a lot more intentional, and I really love this scene here. Dan basically gives his team a very stern talking to, in a way we've never seen before, and I think a way they've never seen before. They've never really seen Dan mad at them. He's always been, easily motivated by them or stuck by them, and really been like this, like, sort of like second father to them. And for the first time, I think he really felt like an authoritative figure. And not that Dan hasn't, but I feel like he hasn't wanted to, he hasn't wanted to face the truth, and now he's realizing that he has to. And he's furious that they swore that nothing happened. And as he speaks, we focus on Eric pretty much the whole time. You can tell that Eric is hiding something. He's acting very nervous. The boys start to argue and literally get into this whole fist fight to the point where Dan has to tell them to sit down. I mean, that was crazy. And if the offender doesn't come forward, they'll all be publicly embarrassed. We again focus on Eric. Dan says that warrants are coming and they have no idea how bad this is, and it seems clear that he's involved. We don't know in what capacity, but this definitely proves that Eric is involved with this. And we then see that his parents are going back and forth on how Eric is there, but he's not saying much, and they don't know if they should let him, and Kurt thinks that they should get a lawyer. Hang on one second, guys. Sorry, guys, I was getting a phone call and I was trying to hang up, but basically, we see that Kurt thinks that they should get a lawyer who is Eric's father, Kurt's dad. That's, I mean, Eric's dad, Kurt, that's his name. But basically, we see that, they're trying to get a lawyer, and his mom isn't convinced that it's going to work, though. She feels that the best thing to do is to stay with him, and Kurt's convinced that the best thing to do is to give him, space to think and take him to his place, but his mom takes him home anyway, and just seeing everything that, just seeing everything that Eric's going through and how it's not better for him at home, at school it's all chaotic because there's clear he's hiding something, then at home it's not much better. It definitely makes sense as to why Eric isn't really saying anything. It's clear that out of the three teenagers we're focusing on, Eric, I think, is the most scared, and you definitely really see that in this episode, and I really love that, and I think they really show that very well. Joey Paulari, I think, was honestly Emmy worthy here. He really did an incredible job in this episode. Really great stuff. So Terry and Michael then meet with their legal counsel, and basically we see that Terry is obviously very worried. Every day there are things being written about Kevin because, he's 18 years old, so his name is the only one in the paper, and it has to stop. And they basically give a swarm of questions to this lawyer, and it makes sense why they're giving these questions. They obviously want answers, but the lawyers can't really give him answers. They give questions like, can they give Kevin a polygraph test? Should Kevin give the police a semen sample? Should he step forward? What can they do to head off the press? And all he says to do is find a way to keep Kevin out of jail. That's what they want to do. They're there for Kevin's best interest, but it's clear that Terry doesn't seem to trust this lawyer. She seems to think that they're after Kevin and that they're going to try to stir this up, so it seems like Kevin is the one that raped Taylor. And I love seeing Terry's character in this episode. Again, Regina King killing it every week, really killed it here. However, without a doubt, the star of this episode was Lily Taylor. She was incredible in this episode. We see Anne meets with Chris, tells him what Taylor has gone through and how he wants to go back to Thurgood Marshall High School, and Chris says he can't help him if he doesn't know his situation, and Anne tells him all about the rape, basically everything we know, and she wants to make sure that he will be safe there. Chris says that he can set up an appointment for Taylor to talk to the school counselor, but if he has problems, that he's got to get them resolved. But Anne says that he's too quiet to do that, and Chris says that he knows some people at Leland and he can check his situation, but he has over 2,000 students, 35 students per classroom, and it's hard to help them all individually. And that's something that the private school didn't have. Leland has a limited number of students, and that's why they have this reputation. It's easier to look after them. But, in this public school, it's obviously not as easy to look after them and everything because there's just so many of them, and he assures her he will try to help Taylor, but he needs to come for him. He needs to come out and say how he's feeling. They're not going to do it for him, and I definitely like seeing that. I like seeing Chris say, we're not going to baby him. We're not going to treat him like a child. He needs to come forward and tell us when he needs the help because that's when we'll talk to him. And I think this is Chris kind of saying to Anne that she needs to kind of let her guard down and kind of let Taylor come to her rather than her have to come to Taylor. Because it's clear that Anne is destined to get answers and she wants to know what's going on and something's not adding up. And I definitely really like seeing that. So Anne then talks to an older woman who I think was her mother. They didn't establish who this older woman was, but just the way she was acting, it felt like this was her mother. And she wants to take her to Chicago for a getaway, which I think is the best thing for Anne right now. Anne definitely needs to be away from Taylor for a while. And Anne obviously doesn't want to leave Taylor behind, thinking that it's going to bring bad memories, you know. And I really like that Anne talked about how this is going to bring terrible memories. Because if you remember, when Taylor was raped, Anne was working. And, well, supposedly when Taylor was raped. I say supposedly because of what we find out. We'll get into that. But, of course, you know, Anne was working and she doesn't want a repeat of what's going to happen, but she does agree to it. She wants Taylor to spend more time with Nate, who, again, I believe is her father, his grandfather, so he has a male figure to talk to since his dad clearly just bailed on them, and we do get a bit more details into what happened with Taylor's father. Basically, he just didn't want to raise the child. He was a coward, he didn't want to raise him, and he ran away. And basically, you know, her mom told her that she needs to date a real man. And I definitely really like seeing that. I like that we got a bit more insight there. Not necessarily something we needed, but it just shows the struggle that Taylor and Anne are going through and how they really only have each other. They have other people in their lives, but at the end of the day, Anne looks out for Taylor and Taylor looks out for Anne. That's just how it's always been. And obviously, Anne doesn't want to change that, and I really like seeing that here. So Kurt is then looking for help. He meets with Terry and Michael because no one else is really giving him help. And the police want to interview the team because Kevin and Eric are both captains, but they live very different lives. One is rich, one is not, one is black, one is white, and Eric was suspended, but Kevin is the one being slandered in the press. And Terry tells, you know, Kurt a lot of things. She really straightened things out and really basically tells him that she doesn't care about the team and doesn't feel that Kevin really cares about the basketball either. She says that he has a high GPA, which will guarantee him a spot in NYU, and Kurt is basically trying to tell her that they have financial trouble, and it seemed to me like Michael did want to help them, but it's clear that Terry is the more dominant one here. I mean, definitely, I think Terry is the more dominant one over Michael, and basically, just as Kurt begins to explain why he can't afford a lawyer, she just takes a call. She literally just walks off, takes the call. I mean, this conversation is basically pointless to her because she's had so many like it. And it makes sense because Terry has that job where she has to make difficult decisions and has to talk to people in a stern way. It makes sense why she would be so passive in this and so not into this conversation because the whole conversation, it seemed like she didn't even really care. But after she steps out, Michael offers to help, but notes that, and I like what Michael says here because, yeah, it really is true that Kevin will have his side and Eric should have his. Eric should get to say how this happened because Kevin already said how things happened for him. So Eric should say the same thing, and Eric should be allowed to come out and tell his father what's going on. So then we see Eric, he's having dinner with Kurt, and after Eric says he doesn't want to talk to the cops, Kurt warns him about arrests and samples, and Kurt seems like he honestly wants to help, but Eric says that he can't fix what's going on between him and his mom, so he's not going to be able to fix this either. And again, it really just shows the emotion that Eric is going through. I mean, he has to face drama day in and day out, and pretty much 24/7 there's drama going on in his lives, and Kurt just wants to get the whole thing over with. Eric's face suggesting that it won't end well. You know, Kurt's saying that why don't we try to talk to someone, but Eric doesn't think this is going to go well at all, and definitely very sad stuff here. So we then see Leslie and Charles, who we find out is actually her boyfriend. He's not her husband, and they go to a play. He's surprised to learn that she still plans to go through with a performance piece at Leland despite the bad press, and we learn a little bit more about his past. Basically, his daughter had some kind of public situation to which he responded too late, and we see that he's very concerned about Leslie. He genuinely cares about her and he wants to marry her. And the way that Leslie is very casual about this, I found very interesting. Do I feel she cares about Charles? Yes, but at the end of the day, Leland is what matters to her the most. She even, takes the situation with the daughter and says, "Oh, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it." She just seems to care about Leland. That seems to be her number one priority, is making this school the best it can possibly be. And I definitely am really loving what they're doing with Leslie's character. And I can understand people are saying she's maybe being a bit underused because they're just showing her every now and again with her boyfriend. But again, like I said, the school is what matters to her. Those scenes in the school to her is truly what she's in love with. She wants to be the headmaster. She wants the school to be in the best condition possible, and she's going to make sure that it stays that way. So, and even though it's not in pristine condition, she at least is going to keep the school afloat, because she knows that definitely there are rumors out there, and she's trying to do whatever she can to make it sound the best it can possibly sound. So Taylor's back at Marshall talking to a counselor, but he's still very shy. He's not telling the counselor anything. He says he's just trying to go day by day right now. He wants a fresh start, and when asked what he wants to accomplish, though, he still has no answers. And I think they really showed here, and I've said before, that Taylor really is struggling. He's really questioning, I think, who he is, and I think this episode definitely confirms that. We then see this really crazy scene. Evie is basically sexually harassed in the halls. There's this guy that's clearly trying to make a pass at her. We see that this young man, Mateo, comes to her defense. Later, Mateo gets suspended for fighting and just throwing out, the N-word out of nowhere. And it really shows how different life is at Marshall. At Marshall, it seems to be a lot more strict than it is at Leland. And it definitely makes sense. You know what, Leland, this is a private school. There aren't as many people that go there. There's this great basketball team. They have this bad reputation, but I think that's one of the reasons why they do things the way they do at Leland. And at Marshall, things are a lot more strict, and there are definitely more black and Hispanics there. And I know there are people that are going to be like, "Oh, that's not a big deal," but those kind of people, they do have a reputation, and definitely, I think this episode showed that very, very well. Is it right? No, obviously it's not right, but that's just the way it is, and I think they showed that very well here. So Evie then tells Taylor about what happened. He says his mom is working and she says she'll come by, tells him that he needs to act happier. And again, Evie doesn't know the full situation. So again, she doesn't really know why he's acting the way he is. And she tells him that she's glad he's back and kisses him. And I like seeing the scene between Evie and Taylor, because it's clear that she wants to have a genuine relationship, but a relationship is built on trust. And that's something that I don't really feel Taylor's given her. He hasn't shown her that trust. He hasn't shown her that he can tell her everything that's going on and that she can trust him. She really hasn't done that yet, and definitely I think they did a very good job of showing that these two are together, but they're not really close. They're really not. So, back to the LaCroix. Kevin doesn't want to get Eric in trouble, but Terry refuses to take no for an answer. Terry also points out that Kevin and Eric will be treated differently because of their races, and Kevin's going to have to face that. And also, Kevin doesn't know for certain that no one did anything wrong. He has to protect himself, so he releases a statement that pushes all guilt elsewhere. Val can account for his whereabouts, and he says he didn't take the pictures of Taylor, and I believe him. I really do. I mean, I understand that Kevin is a little nervous here, but it makes sense. I mean, if you had to come out and say, "Oh, I had nothing to do with this. I didn't want to take these pictures," I think Kevin is the most apprehensive about this because he doesn't want Eric to get in trouble. Eric's not a bad guy. Eric's just facing a lot, and I think Kevin knows that. And definitely, I think they showed that very well here. Really powerful scene. I really loved everything that happened here. Really great stuff. But then we get to the big stuff in this episode, because most of the rest of this episode focuses on Eric. There's a lot that happens with Eric here, and they did a very good job with showing the basically everything that Eric Tanner goes through on a daily basis. We see Eric's brother Peter. He goes to Marshall. He's telling him all about Mateo's fight, and Eric clearly is lost. He's not really talking to him. He's not really there. And to get his brother's attention, Peter grabs his phone, and Eric violently freaks out. He nearly chokes him, and Eric is clearly hiding something. You can just tell. So Peter then talks about how everything sucks, and he's nothing, and when he's 16, he wants to leave to Miami, and It's a crazy scene, it really is. I mean, just seeing that even his brother and him aren't close, nobody really supports him, it's really sad, and I do feel that his family wants to support him, but they don't know what's going on with him. Eric is very lost, and he's very depressed, so then we get what was by far the hardest scene to watch in this episode, and probably one of the hardest scenes I've had to watch in a while. He walks into the bathroom, locks the door, he puts music on, and he starts to take some pills, and he basically attempts suicide. It's very hard to watch because of how realistic it was. I mean, you had music blaring, you had him popping pills, and it was so sad. And you knew it was coming. That's the thing. It made sense why Eric did this. I mean, just seeing what he had to go through definitely made sense. And we then cut to the hospital where Eric is recovering from his suicide attempt. His parents are there, but he only opens up to Dan and it really shows how not close he was with his parents. And it makes sense. His parents are constantly fighting. Dan is that one person that has supported them from the get go. Even though he's upset, it definitely feels more like an upset parent than it does an upset coach. And it's clear that Eric, wasn't necessarily intimidated by Dan. He understood that Dan had to lay down the law, but he still kind of sees Dan as more of a father than Kurt is. And I think it's just the way that Dan approaches things. And Dan asked him the question basically that's haunted him. He didn't want to ask this question to anyone, but he needs to ask him. And the way that he kind of gulps here, I really love that because it shows the fear in Dan. Dan doesn't want to fear that his team would do such a thing, but he knows there's a possibility. So he asked Eric straight out, "Did you assault that boy?" But then Eric reveals what actually happened, and I loved this reveal. Now, I did predict this. I will say that. I predicted this, but I'm just glad that they actually went with this because this was a very daring subject, and I think they handled it perfectly here. We basically find out that Eric is in fact gay, and it's clear that he doesn't want anyone to know this, and Taylor came to the party not just by an invite. He came because he wanted to hook up with him, and they planned it together, and he has evidence to prove it, but he's kept that to himself, and if anyone finds out that he's gay, his social life and basketball days will be over, and it's clear that Eric is worried about his reputation. Everyone sees him. That's why he acted so weird around the girls and why he acted overconfident, and that's why it felt like he was this, like, misogynist, because it's clear that that's how he thinks straight people should act, and that's definitely the act that he has put on. But the biggest part about this is, of course, Taylor. Knowing that Taylor basically willingly went to this party because he wanted to hook up with Eric makes me question, is Taylor struggling with his sexual identity? Because it's clear that Eric knows he's gay. He's not struggling with his sexual identity. He just doesn't want anyone to know about it, and he's trying to be very secretive. So Dan then walks out of the hospital room, clearly, obviously shocked by the news he just got, but I'm pretty sure that Dan also feels relief. He knows it's not rape, he knows he doesn't have to deal with that, and I love what he does next because he goes home and he tells Becca that she can tell him anything. And I think he really saw that this is a kid that hasn't told his parents anything. He's been afraid to talk to his parents. And I like that he told Becca to not be afraid to come talk to him. And I really like seeing that. And I do feel that this whole thing with Becca, I want to see more with her character because they haven't done a lot with her. But now that the case kind of wraps itself up in this episode, I do feel we're going to see more of Becca. I definitely think that's going to happen. So we then make a big jump forward in time. We see Anne being confronted by text messages and emails between Eric and her son. And we didn't see Eric go to the police or his parents, but we can presume that he told them everything that happened. And Anne is encouraged to have a heart-to-heart with Taylor, but she does so, but the way that Anne acts was just perfect. I mean, she acts like a concerned mom. When she sees Evie, immediately she's telling Evie to leave, and Evie refuses, and then it all comes out. Anne is furious, but thankfully not about the fact that Taylor is gay. The fact that she's mad because she made him look like an idiot. And I really do agree what Anne is saying, that she has every right to be angry here. I mean, Taylor could have easily told her what was going on. She even reads some of the text in front of Evie, and she pulls out, and basically she says that, if she thought that that she wouldn't love him because the way he felt, and does he really think that she couldn't love him? Just a really powerful scene. Like I said, Lily Taylor really delivered great work here, and the biggest biggest thing here is, like I said, is Taylor struggling? Does he want to admit that he's gay, or is he just experimenting? That's my big thing here. And Evie now knows what's going on. She heard everything that Anne said, and Evie obviously feels very betrayed. And I definitely think things are going to be very intense between Evie and Taylor. And honestly, he kind of does deserve it. And it's made sense why Taylor hasn't told the truth, because it's clear that he's ashamed of what happened, and I feared that this wasn't a rape, and I like that this wasn't a rape because it just makes things a lot more interesting. This show is not about rape, it's all about struggling with who you are, and it's clear that Taylor is struggling with that, and I definitely really like seeing that. So, the episode ends as the emails and texts are read by Leslie and the Leland Academy board. A few board members claim that the issue's over and legal counsel advised them to not direct traffic, but Leslie's not giving up. She doesn't want to think that this is over. She feels there's more, and, what about the tradition of making the team? That's a big thing that they need to change, and everyone knows about that now, and the school just seems unsafe, and Leslie is most concerned about the aftermath. Now that this has gone on, she's very worried about how the school is going to take this, and she says that they can hope things fall the school's way, or they can make certain that they do. They're going to make, she's going to make sure that there's something good that comes out of this, and definitely Leslie's up for a fight. She's up for a fight, and I definitely feel that this is going to become Leslie versus Anne. This is definitely going to become that. But overall, guys, amazing episode. This episode was so stunningly great. I just loved everything about it. But let's talk about all this information we have now. Now that we know what's going on between Eric and Taylor, is Taylor gay? That's the big question. I mean, it's clear that Taylor wanted to hook up with Eric. He knew that he was going to do that. So is he bi? Is he gay? Is he struggling with who he really is? I really feel that it's a bit of all three. That maybe he doesn't know if he's gay, or he's just kind of struggling with who he is right now. Either way, though, Evie's relation with him is over, okay? Those two are done. I don't see it going well between them, because what can you really say, honestly? Evie has every right to be mad at Taylor right now. If she's mad at him, she has every right to be, because what do you really say to that kind of thing? I'm not really sure, and definitely very interesting stuff here. But let's talk about what's going to happen now. This is far from over, definitely, because now we need to focus on the aftermath of everything that's happened. What this has done to Leland is terrible, because now everyone thinks that Leland is this horrible school, and that there are all of these people here that have bad reps, and it's very much like there are certain areas in my town that people are afraid to go to because of things that they've heard, and that's very much, or there's schools out there as well that people don't want to go to because of details they've heard, and this is very much that kind of case. Obviously, Leslie is very worried about the reputation, and she wants this to work out well, so we'll have to see exactly what she plans to do. I don't know what her plan is, but we'll have to see what happens there, because that definitely is going to get very interesting. Eric needs to open up to his team. He really does. He needs to open up to his team, and he's open up to Dan, but he needs to open up to his team. He needs to not be afraid of how they're going to perceive him. If he tells Kevin, that's my big thing, is how is Kevin going to take this? It's clear that Kevin will have Eric's back. To me, at least, it seems that Kevin will have Eric's back no matter what, but I'm not really sure. Honestly, there's a part of me that thinks that maybe Kevin might not take this the best way, and we'll have to see what happens there. And knowing what his parents is going through, I don't think they really care. I mean, it's clear that Kurt wants to help Eric, but how will he take it if he finds out that his son is gay? We'll have to see what happens there. That's going to be very interesting. This whole situation with Kevin, obviously, I'm pretty sure that the stuff that's written about him is eventually going to go away, but it's still out there for anyone to see. So definitely, Kevin is very fucked right now, and we don't really know what's going to happen there. We'll have to see what happens with that. But as far as Becca goes, Becca definitely is going to get involved. I could definitely see Becca being a big part of this. I mean, she's going to be looked at as a slut now, because I think every girl in the school is going to be looked at as a slut, and I'm definitely interested in seeing what's going to happen with that. Is Taylor going to open up? I mean, it's clear that Taylor doesn't need to open up, because Anne knows what's going on, but Taylor hasn't opened up to his counselor, and is he going to? We'll have to see. That's the big thing I'm looking forward to, is are these two teenagers going to open up? Eric and Taylor seem like they're kind of the same way, but the thing that Taylor has is a very supportive mother. Eric, I don't know if he has that. That's the one thing. So we'll have to see what's going on there. We don't know if Taylor is gay or not. We just know that he clearly is struggling with, I think, who he really is. And then let's talk about Charles. Are Charles and Leslie going to get married? And does Leslie really care about Charles? Like I said, I really feel that Leslie's number one priority is Leland. She wants Leland to be looked at in the best way possible. She doesn't want any bad reputations or anything like that, but it's clear that she wants the school to be perceived in the best way possible, and I definitely really am interested in seeing where that's going to go. Definitely that could get very interesting, and this is about to get very intense. I have no idea what's going to happen the rest of the season, because now this case is closed, that's how things are going to get a lot more interesting, and you guys may be like, oh, the case is closed. It's far from over, though, and that's the thing I love here, is that a lot of people complain that last year they did not reveal what was going on. We know everything that's going on now. We know what happened between Eric and Taylor. We know that this was arranged, that this was something that they did. Now it's all about the aftermath. How is this going to affect Leland? How is this going to affect everyone? What is going to be the outcome of what happened? Is Leland going to be shut down because of this? I mean, for all we know, they could be shut down because now people know about the parties and what they do, and this could really ruin a lot of things. But we'll have to see what happens there. Overall, guys, let me know what you guys thought of this episode. Overall, this was an explosive episode. I really love this episode. Without a doubt, like I said, best episode of the season. I'm really loving this season, I have to say. They're really getting into some very deep issues, and I really think they're handling all of them very, very well. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. We'll see you guys in my next show, which will be for tonight's episode of Legends of Tomorrow, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.